Seahawks fans, wherever you may be. Thanks for listening to the show. Join your hosts, Bill Alvstad and Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football. Hey, hi, Seahawks fans. Welcome back to another episode of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, sitting down with co-host Keith Myers, here to talk Seahawks football. Got a great show for you today. We're talking defenders at the Senior Bowl. We're going to talk about what we're seeing in practices, who's standing out, who's flashing, who's having a great week, all of that stuff. Welcome in, Keith. How you doing?
Doing good. We are recording this, but the Seahawks have yet to add to the offensive coaching staff beyond Kubiak, but there is a report that Andrew Janocko is probably going to be joining the Seahawks as quarterback coach. So that might be the first of many of those dominoes to fall as Kubiak puts his staff together.
Yeah. No, that's good. And they've worked together in the past and so forth. I don't know much about him as a coach, and I assume that if he's a guy that they're targeting, there's got to be good reasons for it. And if he's used to Kubiak and they've got a great working relationship, that's really probably paramount, the first and foremost thing that they're looking for. So, other than that, there's really no news on the roster or anything like that. Both Mike McDonald and John Schneider were at the Senior Bowl. Both were fully engaged in watching a lot of the players, a lot of the 1v1 stuff going on there, and both interested in offensive linemen. I noticed that they were watching those drills pretty keenly. But let's start on the defensive side today. And towards the end or in between all of the stuff, we'll talk about kind of who stood out today, including some offensive players as well. But let's get started with the big guys up front on the defense, the defensive line group. Now, I've got them all kind of mixed together, Keith. Defensive tackles, edges, defensive ends, just kind of all piled in together. So I've got notes on several different guys, but why don't you go ahead and start?
Well, I think that, you look at this, there's a lot of these defensive linemen there at the Senior Bowl. Some really good ones that I've been hoping would kind of stand out, and it's hard for them to stand out because, it's one-on-ones and that kind of stuff. And
it is.
But we've seen a couple of guys like kind of be able to show off some of their explosiveness and that kind of stuff. And it's been an interesting couple of days. And let me find, I said that all of that, and I got to find the note that I was using. Darius Alexander from Toledo was the guy I was trying to refer to. And he is, a guy with really long 34-inch arms, is rangy for an interior lineman, shows great physical or lateral agility and ability to move laterally and not just up the field. Just one of those guys that I'm really interested in. I'm really, wanting to dig into the tape a little more, figure out where I think he's going to be drafted.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. I don't even have measurements on him. He's one of the players I didn't take notes on, one of the very few. But he's listed as a defensive end. I would imagine he's probably going to be into the 280, 285 range, if I'm correct.
Yeah, he is.
Okay. So kind of an edge setter, power guy, 3 down lineman type of a guy.
Yeah, he's not. If he's a defensive end, he's a 3-4 defensive end, not a 4-3 defensive end. Meaning that he's not the the flashy guy that's going to come around the edge. and get to the quarterback that way. He's more of an interior pass rusher, in the B gap, just outside the guard shoulder, and to be able to go through there. He's got some, good pop there, and showed some burst, like his ability to just jump into the space really quickly. So, an interesting player, very interesting player.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of guys that stood out. Now we're talking Senior Bowl guys. There's other players within these position groups that we're not going to talk about, and guys that kind of opted out of this particular game, and guys that already have high grades, kind of didn't show up or left early out of the Senior Bowl. Shimmer Turner, the Texas A&M interior defensive lineman, kind of scheme diverse, can play on the edge, but also can slide into three tech, 6'4", 300 pounds, ran a 4.8 40, very athletic guy, quick off the snap, interesting player for me, I think. And Stewart, Shermer Stewart from Texas A&M, first name the same, but different player. Got an edge, defensive end combo kind of a guy, 6'6", 290, 4.75, 40. 34 and a quarter inch arms with an 83 and a half inch wingspan. He had a great couple of practices in day one and day two and decided to book it. Left the Senior Bowl because he'd already decided that he did enough, him and his agent. And you see a little bit of that. It's a little disappointing to me because I think one of the things that GMs and coaches look for in players, even at these events, is guys that are just super competitive and don't want to leave early. They've already got their draft position kind of etched in stone. It's going to be give or take a few spots in the draft, but you're seeing this more and more now where players are either opting out or in electing to train on their own, get ready for the combine, or go to the Senior Bowl, but only go through an interview process, or show up for practice a couple of times, maybe win several different reps and put in a good showing and then leave. What are your thoughts on stuff like that?
Well, if I'm a GM, I'm looking for guys that love football, um, and guys that are in it because of the celebrity aspect of it. There's a lot of money involved. If those are your driving forces, um, it's different. Um, the guys that just love the game and love to play are the guys that I want on my team. And if you do practice a couple days and then you just peace out, um, and you're completely healthy, then that is very disappointing. And I'm like, okay, why? You are telling me that you would rather go sit on your couch than play football, and to me, that's going to be a knock. It really is.
So what type of players are you looking for in this in the Senior Bowl? And just give me a couple of players on the defensive line that are really kind of popping for you. Like our Omar Norman Lott for me from Tennessee is a
Hmm.
guy almost 6'2", 335 pounds, 33 and 5/8 inch arms, almost 80-inch wingspan, 5'0", 40. Really kind of a nice blend of size and strength and quickness at that spot. I think that you look at a player like Jonathan Hankins that played for Seattle this last season, like 34 years old, getting towards the end of his career. I thought his snaps were pretty heavy first part of the year, diminished as time went on Seattle's defense, and our run um, stops also improved when his usage kind of went down. Byron Murphy continued to play well, etc. It seems though we need another big two gap kind of player in that defense. What are your thoughts around that?
I Yes, but I do think they could go. Um, it would be nice to have someone who can give you that two gapping ability, but also offer some push up the middle. Kind of the way that they used Jerron Reed at times this last
Hmm.
year. And
Like
in
a
that
Walter
mold,
Nolan, something like
well,
that.
the name the guy that's kind of stood out to me at the Senior Bowl would be Joshua Farmer from Florida State. He's 6'3", 314. Has the strength to gap. Has the quickness to penetrate through a gap. Um, Kind of does a lot of different things. Um, and he's raw. If I'm being honest, because some of the stuff that he does, he it works so hard to get upfield that he'll lose his gap and he'll like shift over as he works his way around a guard, and then you'll see the running back run through the hole that he created. And so there's some things that are gonna be there, and it's gonna cause him to drop. But athletically, I think he's a guy that can really come in and give you a lot of versatility in a 3-4 where you can play end on either side, the 3 or the 5. Um, Maybe come inside on designated passing downs and just give you um, just versatility all across the line, because this is a defense that's going to need that.
Yeah, I think a player that I just mentioned prior to you stating your guy was Walter Nolan, Ole Miss, interior defensive lineman, also 3 tech as well, 6'3", 305, 33-inch arms, strong, powerful, versatile. You mentioned versatile.
Mm-hmm.
Interior defensive lineman can be a reliable run stopper right out of the gate, and develop and continue to develop those high end pass rush reps as well. Um, I think this is a guy that's going to be a day one pick somewhere. I think he'll be
He's a little
available.
small. He's a little small for the
Well,
position.
he's kind of a Byron Murphy size. He's about 4 pounds lighter than Byron Murphy, but he's also a little longer.
He's also
Um,
3 inches taller.
Correct.
So if you look at it, he doesn't have the same build. He looks a
It's
little,
true. He's not as
he,
compact.
yeah, and 293 pounds for
He's
an
305.
interior guy.
I've got him listed as 305.
Oh well, NFL.com has him at 293.
Okay.
Um,
This
and
is a
so
Senior Bowl measurement that I've got.
cool. Um, I was just thinking like he is a guy that 305. I like him a lot better at 305.
I do
So
too.
that's an important 12 pounds to me, because that's going to be the difference between him getting blown off the line and being able to hold his own um, against the run. So, uh,
Yeah, he's the guy that dictates terms on an offensive line. I mean, he's going to be able to collapse those double teams and consistently kind of resetting that line of scrimmage when he fires out. Like I don't think that he's going to, and his length is going to allow him to keep blockers off of him and all that kind of stuff. I really like this prospect. The question is, Seattle's at 18. What are they looking for at that spot? And if you go really kind of dig into the first round and you're really looking at value and so forth, it's a player like this, a defensive end or an edge guy, or um, an interior offensive lineman. Maybe you're looking at one of those really athletic pass catching tight ends. There's a couple of corners, and then you get a guy like this as well. That's going to be one of the first, defensive tackles that comes off the board. The thing about Nolan that's kind of intriguing to me is he is diverse. He has that diversity. He's been really popping, standing out at the Senior Bowl, and I know that I don't think that they're done yet adding to that defensive line, especially with Hankins probably moving on, and to
oh,
get a
yeah. Hankins will be moving on, and then they completely lacked depth this year, and so um, they're definitely going to be adding. And I think it's one of those things where if you're going to add, you might as well add a young player that's cheap because he's on a
yeah.
rookie deal and offers you a ton of upside, rather than going out and buying a um, you know, bargain free agent. You know what I mean? Like,
And
go.
the question, and you will have the same question. Everyone will have the same question, right? It's like, well, we need to fix the offensive line. Why aren't we spending a first round pick on an offensive lineman? That should be the first obvious thing. Anything else is a mistake. That's not necessarily true. And that's not the way the draft works. And it's not the way that free agency kind of sets up the draft. So we may have solved at least one of those issues in free agency and so forth. What you're trying to do with that 18th pick, maybe you move back, maybe you move off of it. Maybe there's a player you're going to go up and get, 3 picks earlier at 15, and you need, you want to come away with with that player in the draft. You go do that. I think what you're trying to do in the first round is get the best player available, and
Mm-hmm.
it could be at any position group that the team identifies as being valuable at that spot, and defensive tackle is definitely going to be one of those, I think.
Well, yeah, and like um, drafting the best guard um, in the draft at 18 isn't necessarily a great pick, because if you could move back and get that same exact player at 29, then
Mm-hmm.
you should move back and get the extra picks. Um, and so guard just isn't a position that is highly valued across the league, and so it's not a premium position. Um, and that's going to be one of those things where it's true. And so if a guy is sitting there at 18, you go, you know what? Let's go ahead and get him, and we'll wait. We'll get a guard at 50, because the difference between 18 and 50 when it comes to guards, almost nothing.
Yeah. Well, and Jeremiah, I just lost his last name, from the NFL Network.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Basically came out and said, listen, picks 20 through 60 are essentially the same value in this draft, um, as far as the rankings are concerned. It's just going to be basically what your preference are, how they interviewed with you, if you've got, a need at a specific position group. But as far as value is concerned, those players are coming out somewhat equally valued, which is great news overall, I think, for the league as far as depth is concerned. And we talked about that earlier, this being kind of a depth draft. And that's exactly kind of what we're talking about. There's no drop off shelf between 20 and 60. And so you're going to see a lot of that. You could see Seattle. Maybe there's a team that wanted to come up to 18 and give Seattle some value to move back to 25 or 26. I think that is definitely an option in this draft that hasn't been an option for a couple of years for Seattle. I could definitely see that. I could definitely see Seattle staying at 18 if a guy is there. One of the players that I wanted to talk to you about out of this group before we move on to other groups is a player that left early, really showed up, and had a couple of really decent reps. One could say was Mike Green, the edge out of Marshall, 6'4", 248 pounds, 4'5", 740.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and he's already left, but he had 17 sacks last year. One of the most, productive pass rushers in college football. Smaller school though, Marshall. Definitely wanted to show up to the Senior Bowl. He's one of those players that everyone was kind of interested to find out if he could kind of take his small school skill set and apply it to some of the bigger guys, bigger names, and he definitely did. Had a
I guess,
bullnose.
why did he leave?
Yeah, I know, right? Well, because his agent's in his ear, maybe his dad's in his ear, maybe he's got player personnel, guys that he's been talking to that said, "Listen, you're not going to do yourself any more good or any more favors by sticking around. You got your reps in, you showed everyone what you needed to show, and then you leave." It's frustrating to me. It's frustrating to you because we want to see these guys,
Mm-hmm.
and but it doesn't seem to hurt their draft stock by leaving. And I think that's the thing is like, why stay if it's not going to impact your career, impact the money you're going to make in the draft? And I don't know how you solve that.
Yeah.
Anyway, he's one of those players though that To me, it's hard. It's like you've got kind of a Boye Mafe on your roster already, but we don't really have any depth there after Boye Mafe. You've got, the other side, you've got your player in
You got
Hall, right? But you're really not having a lot of depth there as a pass rush specialist kind of a guy. Do you draft a guy like Mike Green in the first round, maybe after dropping back a few spots, for a player that may not be on the field for 3 downs in his first year?
I don't think so. I think if you're drafting a situational pass rusher, this is a backup. This is a role player, not a starter. You don't draft those in the first round.
But what if he's special?
If he's special, then he should be a starter.
But what if he doesn't play? What if he doesn't set the edge as well as you'd want him to do? Boye Mafe is
Then
much better at that than this
then
guy
he's
would
not
his first year.
then he's not that special.
But what if
He's
he's
a one
Von Miller?
if he's
What
one
if
but
what if he's
Von Miller was a pass rushing like absolutely beast, but he was
Pheno?
not bad
Right,
against the run. He was good at
right. Well,
everything, and he was
this kid's
great
not
at
horrible
something.
against the run. But what I'm saying is he's so twitched up as an edge rusher. That's what you're going to use him for. That's where you want to, spend the reps and the energy during a game. Is you kind of want to
Yeah,
be
but I'm
able to
just
have
saying
this guy fresh in the first quarter and fresh in the fourth quarter.
if you're drafting a player who's only going to be on the field for 30% of the snaps, that's a backup in the rotation. And if you're spending a first round pick on that few snaps, that's not how you run a football team.
We spent a second round pick on Boye Mafe. And what I'm saying
Yeah, and
is,
he's a starter who plays every freaking down.
but what
It
if
was
you can
worth that.
develop the guy like Green into a runs guy, or maybe like Boye Mafe was not known as being an edge sort of player, came in and that actually was better than advertised in that way. It's hard to know right out of the gate a guy like Green, who's just prolific rushing the passer. Somebody's going to take a shot on a guy like that. I don't know if Seattle has the luxury of a pick like that in this draft. I guess is kind of what I'm saying. Is it seems like that pick is a kind of a luxury pick.
Well, yeah, because you're talking about using a first round pick on a guy that's not going to play much. And I don't mean not going to play much his rookie year. The evaluation is that he's not going to play much. He's going to play 35% of the snaps, and that's it. If that's the evaluation, then no, you don't draft him because you can find guys that can give you the pass rush.
So then would you rather draft a guy like AJ Oben from Notre Dame at 6'3", 255, 33.5-inch arms, 81-inch wingspan, 4'7", 940, that also plays the edge well, just as equally as his pass rush repertoire at this point, and you can pick him up in the back of the second or early third round somewhere.
So yes, I would rather draft that, but it isn't who they are right now. It's who they will be, and that's your evaluation, and it's why GMs miss, and it's why it's hard. If your evaluation on Green is that he will be a one-trick pony, and you have to get him off the field because he's a liability against the run, then you draft him based on that. If your draft evaluation is he's going to be a one-trick pony this first year, but he has the strength, he has this, there's technique stuff that we see that I know we can fix. He will be an every down player in year 2. Then yes, then you're talking about a completely different guy. It isn't about who they are right now. It's who they're going to be. And that's why this is hard, and why they get paid a lot of money to make those evaluations.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. It's really hard. Okay. So is there anybody else we want to talk about, a different position group?
I wanted to throw one more name at you. Alfred Collins from Texas.
Yeah. Bigger guy.
6'5", 320, and has room on his frame to add like 15 more pounds. He's huge, and like tall, and if you want a guy to be that pure nose tackle, he might be the best one in this draft.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, no, I like him. I like him a lot, it's hard to have a guy that's that athletic at that size. I like that. The only hesitation I have for him is he is 23 and almost 23 and a half by the time the season starts. And if he's not quite ready for whatever reason, you're going to churn a year. He's going to be 24 by the time he makes an impact in the NFL, which is tough.
Mm-hmm. No,
But
I hear you.
nonetheless, it's a player that if he's sitting there in the fourth round or something, that would be an ideal kind of a draft pick for me. There was another player I wanted to talk to you about, the kid from Oregon. What was his name? Jordan Birch,
Mm-hmm.
base defensive end. I think Seattle's in the market for another guy like what we currently have in Derek Hall, just because there's just not a lot of depth there. And to get a guy like Birch, if you could get him in the third or fourth round, 6'4", 291 pounds, almost 33-inch arms, 4'6", 40, very
But
versatile defensive
that's not a
line
Derek
guy.
Hall backup, or that's not even that's not a Derek Hall type. That's not someone at
Yeah, but he's
291 pounds.
well,
He's
okay, so
40 pounds larger. He's a
it would be a
defensive
Williams.
end.
Yeah, Williams,
Yeah.
kind of a guy, Leonard Williams, guy that could come in and be part of a nice rotation there, because we're going to be moving on from a couple of players. Potentially, Jaron Reed's not coming back. You're looking at, sorry, I don't have my roster up. I probably should. The other player that we got from Denver that's in free agency is probably going to be let go, somewhat of a cap
Jones.
casualty. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's Jones moved and was an edge player, and I'm trying to keep the interior defensive line, which are the nose tackle and the 3 and 5 tech, separated from
Gotcha.
the edge players, because technically the edge players are outside linebackers. It's a different position, and there's not a lot of back and forth between those two. And that's why, like, the guy you're talking about at 290 something pounds isn't going to help you at where Hall and Maffei are, because they play very different positions. But he will help you on the line if Jaron Reed doesn't come back. Like, that would be very important.
Mm-hmm. Or Dre Jones, for example. Yeah.
Yeah. So when we start talking edge players, like someone to come in and be part of the rotation with the pass rushers, you're talking at that point someone who's 250, maybe 260 pounds, and is pretty twitchy. Guys at this are at the event, at the Senior Bowl, that come to mind would be like Kyle Kennard from South Carolina.
South Carolina. Yeah. Yeah. 6'5", 254, 4'7", 40, 33 and 3/8 inch arms.
Slow. He's a little slow for that spot, but he will probably be coming later in the draft. So,
yeah, fun. Okay, so how about linebacker? There's a few that are interesting to me. Eugene Asante, Shermer James out of Florida had one of the highest GPS speeds out of anybody at the Senior Bowl this last week. Samael Mondon Jr. out of Georgia, 6'3", 235, 4.46 40. That's really exciting to me. 21 years old, shows up at the Senior Bowl, guy that kind of pops above everyone else all week. Nick Martin, Colin Oliver, Jeffrey Bossa from
that's
Oregon.
the name that I wanted to bring up.
6'2", 235.
Yeah, I mean, he's good size, good athleticism, and all that. But the thing that stood out, according to a couple of different things that I read, was just leadership. Like he's up there calling out, you know, plays and just being loud, and everyone can hear him, and he just stands out amongst a group of people that are trying to stand out.
Yeah.
Um,
And he looks
and
good too, out there and
yeah,
really kind of popping and staying with in coverage, coming forward and blasting up holes and getting to running backs. Kind of a third round grade kind of a guy. So if he's gonna be there at 80, where Seattle's at, that would be kind of a perfect pick. I think for me, somebody that's athletic, that's gonna um, be part of your linebacker room that's fairly light after night and Ernest
hmm
Jones. If Ernest Jones is back, if Ernest Jones somehow gets blown up and they can't come to terms and we lose out on him and we're really not
ugh,
addressing it well in free agency, Bossa could come in, Knight could kind of take over your primary spot. Bossa's got the ability to play kind of both spots, the will side, the traditional up the middle guy. Another guy that I would be very much interested in if a guy like Ernest Jones can't come back would be Demetrius Knight Jr.
hmm
We'd have two Knights on in the linebacker room, which would be interesting to me. Now, this guy would be more of a early second round, maybe get to 50 kind of a guy. But again, if you're minus Ernest Jones now, and you really got to solve that starting level player, a guy like that would be really interesting to me. 6'2", 245, 4'6", 240, 33 and a quarter inch arms, 80 plus wingspan, downhill player, also sideline to sideline, good instincts, shows up really well at the Senior Bowl. That guy is on my radar for sure.
yeah. He's a guy that's on my radar. I don't like that we're talking about Ernest Jones not re-signing because that
Sure.
scares me. A guy that I was looking at on here, and I don't have like speed like as far as those kind of numbers, but just kind of watching him. Carson Sweshinger
Okay.
out of UCLA, 6'2", 225. So he's undersized but quick. Um, and just like I said, I don't know pure speed running someone down. I don't have that number, but I know that you
Yeah, I
watch
don't either.
short area quickness and he explodes to the ball, um, and does it just it's good instincts, gets downhill, gets into the hole, and just like I said, just explodes to the ball. Um, he is undersized, so he would have to go and be play that position that Knight played at the end of the year and have Knight move over. But man, that kind of speed just stands out.
Agreed. So let's talk defensive backs. I've got them all lumped together, both corners and safeties, and I do have them broken down when I talk about them, but I've got them, in a list. Malaki Moore, safety out of Alabama, 6 foot, 198, 4'5", 40. He's a little bit of an older prospect, but he's going to give you some football IQ, proven leader, that sort of thing. Captain for Alabama in 2023. Noel Williams, fifth and sixth round grade at cornerback. California at 6'1", 200 pounds. I like him. Very solid, competitive, physical corner. Um, a guy like that would be interesting. It really depends on our roster.
Yeah.
If Josh Joby comes back, we've got Nehemiah Pritchett. Trey Brown's probably going to be gone. I think you could definitely bring in some competition for that third corner, or Witherspoon's got that slot nickel spot kind of locked up, but
hmm
you could have a kind of an outside corner job open up. Another job that might be available in this defense would be a third safety. Um, we know that Kayvon Wallace is probably not going to be back. You've got a couple other guys that are Maybe Rashawn Jenkins comes back. Maybe he's a cap casualty. I think that room's going to need to get filled out as well. So there's some interesting names here, like BJ Adams, Central Florida, 6'3", 190 pounds, press corner, but needs to be a little bit more physical when it comes to stopping the run, coming up in run support.
And see, after the Tariq Woolen like stuff the last couple of years, I am wondering if the Seahawks, if someone goes, well, we really need them to be more physical. I think that might just take them off, maybe not completely off the board, but move them down far enough on the board that someone else will take them first. I was looking more at a guy like Mac McWilliams out of UCF. He's only 5'10", 181, but he's your slot guy. So if they just, if they can't get, Job back, he could come in and do that. But this is a guy that gets upfield, tackles like he's much bigger than he is, kind of like Devin Witherspoon in that sense, where he can get up and make plays for you at the line of scrimmage. And honestly, teams need cornerbacks that can tackle.
Yeah. And he is only 5'10", 185, Central Florida. He did, play well at Central Florida, but does that translate into the NFL? I think it does, as far as fundamentally sound. I just don't know if he's going to be able to be a boundary guy. I think
I don't think he's a boundary guy. I think he's a pure slot guy. And so, when you're in your base defense, Witherspoon's out there. And when you bring him in the nickel, you let him go inside to the slot and leave Witherspoon on the boundary, or blitz him, or move him around.
I got a guy that I really like at the Senior Bowl. Azarai Thomas out of Florida State. I've got kind of a second round grade.
To talk about him.
Second round grade on him, 6'2", 198, 4'5", 40, 32 and a half inch arms, totally scheme diverse. Can play all over. He can play press, zone, outside, inside. It's kind of the perfect corner for Mike McDonald, because he likes to disguise and move those guys around. And he would be a high character, strong work ethic, not afraid to come up and hit. Good cover guy. I think, in a second round grade, if he's available at 50, that's the kind of pick that you want. A guy that can come in right away, compete for a starting spot, if not be a guy that's able to come in and be part of a rotation right away, special teams guy, and eventually work himself into a starting spot.
Yeah, I agree. That is that's a guy I like. It seems that the other guys the guys that I keep noticing, the guys that pop for me, tend to be smaller guys. I mean, maybe that's because a lot of one-on-ones, and it's who has the best short area quickness, and they tend to be smaller guys. But Maxwell Hairston comes to mind.
I was just looking at him as well.
5'11", 180. So not the biggest guy, but
I've got him at 186 measured this week on Monday.
Okay. But yeah, he's long arms for his size. He does add some length. He plays a little bigger than his size. But just kind of ball hawkish and all over the field, and seems to be really rangy with his speed. So a guy that just, I don't know, he's kind of popped off the tape a little bit, and I'm excited to see more.
I agree. I think he did pop this week. Also, he comes up and plays the run really well. Like, he's totally willing to come and stick his nose in, not afraid to initiate contact. His football IQ is what he's known for. Guy that comes in is very instinctual, kind of calls plays on the back end of a defense for Kentucky. And it looks like he's probably got a second or third round grade. So he's probably going to be available if Seattle would want to take him. Another player in kind of that same sort of mold is Quincy Riley out of Louisville, slightly later in the draft, maybe fourth round, 6 foot, 195 pounds, 4.5 40. He's already shown at the Senior Bowl he's one of the best corners there. He's matching up against everybody, not afraid to back. He's not backing down. The reps look consistent, and he's popping. Physical and instinctual is the word on Quincy Riley.
Yeah. I'm just looking over a list of other corners, and he's not at the Senior Bowl, so I probably shouldn't bring him up. But just for the name, and that's the only reason why I'm bringing him up. There is another Kobe Bryant in this draft.
I did see that with 2 E's, right? Kobe Bryant.
Yep. Yeah, Cobee. That if you want to make the announcer's job difficult, that's where you go right there.
Nice.
That would be funny.
There's some nice safeties in this.
Your...
If Seattle's looking for a kind of a strong safety in the box kind of a guy,
which they are
in this draft, there's a few of them that they've got a chance to pick up. Lathan Ransom, Ohio State, 3rd, 4th round grade, 6'1", 210, younger guy, age 22, kind of a do-it-all, drop the hammer on you, downhill safety, but can also drop back into coverage. Another guy is Xavier Watts out of Notre Dame, same sort of thing. There's a few more. I mean, I've got other names, and I'll have to kind of scroll through to get to them. But those are two guys that have popped for me.
That's very interesting to me.
Yeah.
He's got that kind of old school mentality. Honestly, this is what the Seahawks missed last year. They had Jenkins in the role. It didn't work that well. When he got hurt and they moved Love up into the strong safety role, he was a different type of strong safety.
You even had Devin Witherspoon kind of playing that role a little bit in Mike McDonald's defense.
Yeah, because him and Love would kind of like switch on and off, and as what they're doing, they tried to move Witherspoon all over the place, and so yeah, you'd end up with that. I just think that when you get a guy like Watts, who could come in and just be that enforcer in the middle and get up and play like a linebacker against the run, but then carry the middle zone in the pass, or step over to a tight end, like you add something to the defense that you didn't have. And I think this is like a late 1st round pick, so they could trade back a couple times and get to like 26, grab a couple extra picks and then get him, and that would really just line up nice for the defense.
I would say another guy in that same sort of mold would be Andrew Makuba out of Texas, 3rd round-ish grade. So he's going to be, top 100 player, but after 70 somewhere. Scheme diverse safety, 6 foot, 190 pounds, 4.33 40.
Yeah.
But also physical. So, this is kind of where we get into, what is he? Is he a free safety? Is he a strong safety? Well, he's everything. He's kind of a hybrid guy, kind of like Jenkins is, or Diggs was in our old defense a couple of years ago. He's kind of in that mold where you can kind of move him around. He can drop back for you. You can disguise with him that way. I think that the versatility of this defender, Makuba, could be somebody that would be on Mike McDonald's radar for sure.
Yeah, I would agree with that. There's a couple guys in here that I like that I'm not sure if they would be on Seattle's radar. Malaki Moore out of Alabama. If you wanted to upgrade free safety, which would be upgrading over Kobe Bryant, who was great last year. Like that's where you'd have to go. He's a center fielder. He's a guy with a ton of speed and the ability to play back, but I just don't see Seattle wanting to do that when you've got Kobe Bryant there. Like he earned and played up way above expectation and played really well. So I don't think you'd want to move on from that, but there's some really nice talent who play that kind of stuff. So,
Yeah.
what do you
Yeah.
do if you're sitting there and one of these guys drops into your lap at in the 80s and you had him in the 60s is where you had him ranked?
I
Can you get
guess
him
you
on the
would,
field?
you would try to, you would want to have put the greatest value on the scheme diversity guy, whoever that is, a guy that you could play nickel, a guy that could play some boundary stuff, could drop back in a too high look for you. Um, that's what I would want to do, because I think if you're going to draft a guy that high, he better be either damn good and a starter, or he's going to have that diversity for you that you could move him all over the place and eventually work into a kind of a really nice role for you. The nice thing about this draft, defensive back wise, for me, is the depth on this draft runs 7 rounds. And I really think that Seattle's, if they're looking for a safety, they're looking for a corner, they're going to be able to get one at different levels of the draft, depending on how the draft falls. So I'm confident they're going to come out of the draft with a defensive back. I just don't know where it's going to be and what value they're going to assign to that and so forth.
So a guy I'm interested in, but for some reason I just haven't I just didn't see this week, but I know he's there is Maxon Hook, out of Toledo, 6 foot 203, and is an in the box tackling machine
Mm-hmm.
on his
Yeah,
tape. But
strong safety. Yeah,
how's he looked in coverage and stuff this week?
I have not paid attention to Max and
So you
Hook.
haven't seen him either. Okay.
I wrote the same notes that you wrote down and stopped there. There's just so many guys. Like there's 130 players at the Senior Bowl,
Yeah.
right? And we're trying to do the best we can do with the resources that we have, which are just you and I.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can promise you this: by the time the Senior Bowl is over and we get to the combine and we've started our position group looks for every position, that will go 20, 25 players deep for every position that we are talking
Yeah.
about. We will definitely cover players like Max and Hook for sure. The
Yeah,
only there
I
was
just know
there
you've got a lot more names and you've done a lot more. Like I'm still way behind you. I was hoping that you would have some Max and Hook information just because he's intriguing, but I just haven't had time yet.
Well, I do have a lot of safety information. I have a lot of strong safeties that I really like in this draft, like Jonas Sanker from Virginia, 6th, 7th round grade, scheme diverse safety, 6'1", 210, 4.55 40. I like him. He's been showing up. I like Hunter Wohler from Wisconsin, like a 7th round guy. Like you're going to draft this guy at like 220, 230 in the draft, close to the end. But he's 6'2", 218, 4'5", 240, exceptional tackler, very diverse, instinctive run defender.
As
I've
long
got a
as they
note
can
on,
play, as long as they can play special teams, that's how you get on the roster as a
yeah.
7th round pick. And
Well,
then
and I've got a note on him here. It says overall, Waller projects as a starting strong safety in the NFL. Creative and aggressive defensive coordinators are better for Waller as a low hole defender playing close to the line of scrimmage. Defenses that value swarming the line of scrimmage pre-snap with simulated pressures will be a good fit for him. And I was like, well, that's Mike McDonald. And so, just a name to watch. But yeah, and a guy like Darian Porter, the Iowa State corner, 6'4", though, 200 pounds, 33 and 2/8 inch arms or a quarter-inch arms, 80-inch wingspan, 4'3", 840, but he's 24 years old. So if he's available in the 3rd, 4th round, maybe you take a flyer on a guy like that, come in, make an immediate impact. You get through a couple of contracts. I've thought a lot about this age thing over the years, Keith. and I almost think that too much emphasis is put on it. If a player is 24 years old and is a high impact player, I don't have any problem drafting him because if you're drafting a player that you're getting in the 6th, 7th round and he's 24 and you're going to have to develop him for a while, or if you have any expectation for him being anything other than a special teams player, I probably want to avoid that. But if this guy's going to come in an immediate impact guy, he's going to be part of your rotation or a starter level kind of a guy, but he's got all the physical traits that you want, I don't have a problem drafting a 24-year-old player.
Well, I mean, I take everything case by case, and I try and do that because it all just depends on the guy. But
And let me interrupt you just for half a second. And you're going to see more and more of these guys as time goes on because of all these NIL contracts.
Yes.
So players are going to stay in college longer. They're going to come out later, and they're going to make some good money. And I don't blame them. That's just the way it is right now. I don't particularly care for the system, but what's going to happen is you're going to get older players entering the draft.
Yeah, because if you're good and you can earn money, you don't have to leave college in order to go make a living. You can do that at the college game. So you are going to see that. This statistically, guys that are 24 and older are much less likely to succeed in the NFL. And there's a couple of reasons that people believe that that's the cause of that. One is that physically you're about at your peak at 25. And so you're just about tapped out when you get drafted. You might get smarter and better in that sense, or more technical, but you're not. Your body's going to start going downhill before you get a chance to be good. And then the other part is if you're 24 and you're playing against a bunch of 20 and 21-year-olds, like, you better look better than them. So you might just really stand out on tape because you're playing against guys that are younger than you. Your body's had more time to fill out and develop. And so,
and a lot of these players are 5th and 6th year players now at this point. They've had a lot of wear and tear.
Yeah. And there's that also. And so I think that you kind of go back and forth with this a little bit, because if everyone's like, oh, don't draft anyone who's 24, and then a guy who's really good drops much further than their talent suggests they should, well, okay, I'll spend a 5th round pick on him because I've got a 3rd round grade on him, but he was too old. And so you might end up with a situation where you're using middle or mid-late round picks on guys that are older because the value's there, where it wasn't to spend a 3rd round pick on them. I don't know. It's just one of those things. It kind of comes in cycles a little bit, but statistically, the 24-year-olds just don't succeed in the NFL the way the when guys are drafted young. The guys that drafted at 21 have a much, much higher success rate in the NFL than the guys that are 24.
And some of that, especially at like quarterback, it's hard to do that. And I want to talk, and the reason I want to mention that is because I kind of want to talk about just specifically day 3 at the Senior Bowl and talk about a few players I watched today really closely, and just kind of want to talk about players that popped a little bit. Tyler Show from Louisville. He looked the most consistent all week, like started pretty well and finished the week practice wise pretty well. The problem with him is he turns 26 years old this year. 26 years old coming out into the draft as a quarterback. 6'5", 225. He's got some tools, but right. So he's either a 7th round guy for me or an undrafted guy, because he's going to be your scout team quarterback. Probably not even going to be a backup quarterback in the NFL. Let's be honest. Okay. The other guy, though, I want to talk about, and everyone's going to start talking about him, and I get that, but also I'm very interested in this quarterback because I do believe he could be a quarterback Seattle takes at 18, and that's Jackson Dart. For me, he started the week rough his first day, but got more consistent, more comfortable, and better every day this week, and and day 3 practice, I think was his best. The quarterback that looked the best and had the best practices the last 2 days was Jackson Dart. I think he sneaks up draft boards. If you go look at big boards right now, he's in the 50s and 60s.
Oh,
I
he will be drafted
guarantee
there.
you that Jackson Dart is going to be the third quarterback taken in this draft and
I
could
would say,
very
yeah.
well be taken as early as Seattle at 18.
That actually would not shock me. It wouldn't at all. That he's the third best quarterback in this draft, I don't think is one of those things that is. I mean, who would you put above him? I mean,
Well,
Cameron Ward is
nobody right now.
probably
You could
Cameron
even
Ward
make the
and Shedeur
argument.
Sanders are
You,
going to be 1 and 2.
everyone had Milroe as being the third guy, and I do not agree with that. And I especially do not agree with that after this week at Senior Bowl.
Yeah.
Jackson Dart is the better quarterback, and that's it. Now, Milroe's got the athletic upside. He's got all of that. He's got some
Mm-hmm.
potential, but he's not good at throwing the ball. And he's
Yeah.
not good at going through reads and running an NFL style offense. Now, Jackson Dart still has some room for improvement on those things as well, still makes some mistakes, but the upside, what he can do, which is what GM should be focusing on. What can he do? What will he do? You mentioned projection earlier in the show. What can he do? Not maybe this year, but what can he do sitting behind Geno Smith for a year next year? And I think that Jackson Dart gives you the most upside, other than those first two guys that aren't going to be available to Seattle, but gives
Yeah.
you the opportunity, potential to be your franchise guy moving forward. And you can get him at 18 in the first round. Listen, you got to go get a quarterback at some point. Geno's not going to be around forever. I think if you recognize that this kid has those upsides, you take your shot.
Well, CX tried to take their shot last year. They tried to move up um, to get the kid out of Washington, and unfortunately, Atlanta kind of screwed them over, and chose to not trade and end up picking him himself, and it was
Yeah.
that was such a terrible thing by like Atlanta just screwed that whole situation up. Um, but the Seahawks are clearly looking for that guy. And if Jackson Dart is there at 18, he will be that guy.
My only
I don't.
fear is that he's playing himself even up further than that. And
It's gonna
like
say
you,
I don't know
Keith,
if he'll be there at 18.
I have not really dove into the um the draft well enough to know what all the teams are doing before Seattle. And so it's hard for me to know exactly what's going to take place, and the quarterback market can change after free agency, et cetera. So we just have to wait and play it by ear, but you never know. You never know. At this point, you just don't know. Dillon
Yeah.
Gabriel is another quarterback that looked good overall, but really struggled in the red zone today. And he's one of those guys that really thrives in that wide open spread offense, Keith. But when the field shrinks, so does Dillon Gabriel.
Yeah.
It's condensed for him. He has issues. He's only 6 foot. He's 186 pounds. He's just not seeing the field as well.
Yeah. I mean, and that was kind of what we expected. It's unfortunate, but that is kind of what we expected him coming in. So with Jalen Monroe, like the comp that people are gonna keep bringing up is Lamar because of his ability to just generate explosive plays. I just and he's got incredible arm as far as like arm talent. Being able to just throw the ball. He's got a cannon there, but I don't know. When I was watching Lamar and I was scouting him and his year coming out, I felt like I was like, people are sleeping on this guy. He's going to be great. Like he should be the first quarterback off the board. And people were doubtful. And when I'm looking at Milroe, I'm not in that same headspace. I'm like, yeah, he does things great, but are we sure he's not another guy like Fields? that's just never going to be competent enough throwing the ball for him to be a starter. And that's why, like you brought up, you know, this whole conversation is really about Jackson Dart, um, because Dart's a guy that makes all the throws. He wins by throwing the ball. He is a quarterback, not a runner. And honestly, I think that he's going to be a good pro. And you're right. I don't know if he'll be there at 18. By the time
And
all the
that's crazy talk right now. I mean, people listening to us are just going to be nailing us probably with their opinions of Jackson Dart and all that kind of stuff. But I'm telling you, and we saw it last year, quarterbacks rise in the NFL
yeah,
because
I
of
mean,
supply and demand, and it's
JJ
just one of those
McCarthy,
deals.
JJ McCarthy is an example. He was not. He is one of those guys that you could look at and be like, I don't know where does he win and all that kind of stuff. And he went, you know, top 10. Um, you know, a lot of people were really down on the kid out of Oregon, Bo Nix, and yet he went at 12. Um, would you rather have had Bo Nix when he was coming out or Jackson Dart this year? Um, they're
Yeah.
kind of similar in terms of how I view them in terms of overall quality. And Dart's way younger, so I like the idea of uh, man. If, like I said, if the Seahawks pull the trigger at 18 and go get their quarterback, I'll be happy.
So a lot of the guys that stood out this week, we've already talked about. A couple of guys we talked about in the offense show that we had a couple days ago. The tight end Elijah Araro
Mm-hmm.
has been standing out. Miami. He's just got one of those bodies, Keith, that you just want to have on your team. A big,
Mm-hmm.
long, strong, good pass catcher, catches the ball away from his body, yards after catch potential, all that stuff. And then the other tight end I'm very interested in as well as Mason Taylor looked really good this
Mm-hmm.
week. Those two guys have really helped their draft stock, I think, this week.
Yeah. It's weird.
And that's
Before this week, Arroyo was being looked at like a fourth round pick. And the
now
way
they
he's
both look
played
like top
there,
45 picks.
yeah, I would be very surprised if either of those guys make it out of the second round at this point.
I
So
agree. I am totally in agreement there. They will not make it out of the second round. Mark my words.
tight ends that can
I've
do
been
the
around
things
the
that they
draft for a
do,
long time, and I can tell you right now,
yeah,
those guys are premium talent that you just don't find in every draft. And when you do, they're gone. They're gone before the end of the second round.
yeah.
That's all I had notes wise. I got a lot more notes, but we have a lot more shows to talk about specific position groups. And, really, the game is not so significant, but it is nonetheless a fun watch if you have time on Saturday to watch the quarterbacks process. There's some good running backs in this draft, and quite a few of them are at the Senior Bowl. There's a lot of defensive backs, especially some safeties, I think that will raise some stock here at the Senior Bowl. The
Mm-hmm.
offensive lineman, Keith, I'm not terribly impressed with at the Senior Bowl, but there's a
There's a
couple of
couple.
that have done really well for themselves here. We've already talked about those guys.
Yep.
Um,
Gray
yeah,
Zabel.
Zabel had a great week. In fact, he's probably the top performer out of the week. He was the guy coming in North Dakota State with the most to prove, and he did. He proved it. Now, where does he land?
Did
I
he
would
have?
say he's not going to make it out of maybe the back end of the first or early second round.
I think he'll go a little later than that because he's going to be playing interior.
Yeah, but wait
Um,
until the combine.
that's
Wait
true.
until the guy shows up at the
Yeah, because
combine and he
you
runs
watch him
circles around
move.
him. Yeah,
Yeah. He's a guy, but he has lined up in practice at all five
is
offensive line positions,
that's just amazing to me and fabulous for him. Like
and
he looked
yeah,
good playing center. Like it was the first time he played center. He'd been playing tackle in
yeah.
North Dakota State, lined up at center and played well.
if the Seahawks draft him, put him in at center with Oluwatimi and let him beat Oluwatimi out, I would not be sad.
Yeah,
Not at all.
that was the note that I had. It's funny you mentioned that. That was the exact note that I wrote down for Gray Zabel, and it's literally the last note on my entire sheet. It said he can play every position on the offensive line.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh yeah, it'd be fun to have a player like that.
Mm-hmm.
I still think it's a slight chance because of the competition he faced. Anybody can come into the Senior Bowl and really kind of do okay. But I think, it's just something about that kid I really like. So we'll see. So where are we from here? I can't remember if we start our, let me take a look.
I think we actually
Start our position group shows.
Well, yeah, but it was more from a free agency point of view because that comes up first.
Okay.
Isn't
I think, well, we've got all of February to get through before free agency really hits. So I do have our draft prospect series starting on Monday with quarterbacks. So,
nice.
And then running backs, then tight ends, wide receivers, interior offensive line, offensive tackles, and then the combine preview, which is February 22nd. And then we go a few more after the combine. And then we talk on Thursday, March 6th. We have a free agency primer offense.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, we're a ways away from free agency, but
yeah, by then we may have, we will have seen a whole bunch of moves done by the Seahawks in order to get under the cap and generate some cap room. So we'll have a lot to talk about. That's for sure.
Oh yeah. It never ends. The off season this is the fun part. I mean, this is the good stuff now where you start to get into roster building and all that kind of stuff and generating cap and going through free agency is just part of the process that I love. And then the drafts, the lead ups to the draft stuff is just the primo stuff. All right. Let's get out of here. Find Keith on Blue Sky at Myers NFL. You can find me at NW Seahawks Show, Seahawks Playbook Podcast. Find us on your favorite podcast platform and YouTube. Have our own YouTube channel. And make sure you hit that subscribe button. Leave us a comment. Always enjoy those. And we will see you early next week. Enjoy the Senior Bowl. We'll come back. We'll talk about it. And we'll start our draft prospect series with quarterbacks on Monday. So until then, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook Podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NW Seahawk, Keith is at Myers NFL, and the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.